Pisgah National Forest, with its lush canopy and winding trails, had long been a sanctuary for the residents of Asheville, North Carolina. On the crisp morning of October 3rd, 2023, however, its serene beauty was shattered by a discovery that would send shockwaves through the quiet mountain community. Mark and Sarah Jennings, avid hikers and longtime Asheville residents, set out at dawn for their weekly trek along the Graveyard Fields Trail. As they rounded a bend in the path, Sarah spotted something unusual through a break in the underbrush. "Mark, there's someone down there," she called out, her voice tinged with uncertainty. As they cautiously approached, the couple's worst fears were confirmed. Lying at the base of a steep embankment was the motionless form of a woman, her dark hair splayed out on the forest floor. With trembling hands, Mark dialed 911, while Sarah, a nurse at the local hospital, scrambled down the slope to check for signs of life. But it was clear from the woman's pallor and the unnatural angle of her limbs that they had arrived too late. Within hours, the tranquil trail had transformed into a bustling crime scene. Yellow police tape cordoned off a wide area around the body, while forensic technicians in white suits meticulously combed the area for evidence. Detective Sarah Brennan of the Asheville Police Department arrived just as the medical examiner was preparing to examine the body. At 38, Brennan was known for her sharp intellect and unwavering determination. As she surveyed the scene, her trained eye picked up details that would prove crucial in the investigation to come. The victim was identified as Emily Walsh, a 32-year-old elementary school teacher at Asheville's Oak Grove Elementary. Emily was well known and loved in the community, making her death all the more shocking. Initially, the scene pointed to a tragic suicide. Emily's body was found with no obvious signs of a struggle, and a note was discovered in her jacket pocket. The handwritten message spoke of despair and hopelessness, ending with a plea for forgiveness. However, as Brennan examined the area more closely, inconsistencies began to emerge. The position of Emily's body seemed slightly off for a fall from the embankment above. Additionally, despite the recent rainfall, Emily's clothes were surprisingly clean, as if she had been placed there rather than having fallen. As the sun began to set over the Pisgah Forest, casting long shadows across the crime scene, Detective Brennan knew she was facing a complex and potentially explosive case. The death of a beloved community figure like Emily Walsh would be scrutinized closely, and Brennan was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. Michael Walsh sat in the sterile interview room of the Asheville Police Department, his handsome features drawn with grief and exhaustion. At 35, Michael was a rising star in Asheville's legal community, known for his sharp mind and charismatic courtroom presence. Now, however, he seemed a shell of his former self as he recounted the last time he had seen his wife alive. "Emily was fine when I left for work that morning," Michael insisted, his voice barely above a whisper. "She was planning her lessons for the week. Everything seemed normal." Detective Brennan watched Michael carefully as he spoke, noting the slight tremor in his hands and the way his eyes darted around the room. Years of experience had taught her that grief could manifest in many ways, but something about Michael's demeanor raised a red flag. As Brennan delved deeper into the Walsh's life, cracks began to appear in the facade of their seemingly perfect marriage. Neighbors reported hearing frequent arguments in recent months, with Michael's voice often rising in anger. Caroline Devine, who lived next door to the Walshes, recounted a particularly heated exchange she had overheard just days before Emily's death. "Michael was shouting something about betrayal and lies," she told investigators. "I almost called the police, it was so bad." Financial records revealed that Michael had recently taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Emily worth $2 million. When confronted with this information, Michael became defensive. "It was Emily's idea," he claimed, his composure slipping. "She was worried about our future, wanted to make sure I was taken care of if anything happened to her. Is it a crime to plan for the worst?" Further investigation uncovered that Michael had been working late hours at his law firm, often not returning home until well after midnight. Several of his colleagues hinted at a possible affair with a young paralegal, though no one could provide concrete evidence. When questioned about his whereabouts on the night of Emily's death, Michael's story was vague and inconsistent. He claimed to have been working late at the office, but security footage showed him leaving the building at 7:30 p.m., hours before he said he had gone home. A search of Michael's home office turned up a crumpled note hidden in his desk drawer. The handwriting, later confirmed to be Michael's, read, "I can't keep living this lie. Something has to change." As Brennan pieced together the evidence, a troubling picture began to emerge. Had Michael's neglect and possible infidelity driven Emily to despair, or was there a more sinister explanation for her death, with a potential motive, inconsistent alibi, and circumstantial evidence pointing to his involvement? Michael Walsh became a prime suspect in his wife's death, but as Brennan would soon discover, he was far from the only person with secrets to hide. Priya Sharma sat ramrod straight in her chair, her dark eyes meeting Detective Brennan's gaze unflinchingly. At 29, Priya was the youngest teacher at Oak Grove Elementary, known for her innovative teaching methods and fierce ambition. "Emily was a wonderful colleague and friend," Priya said, her voice steady. "I can't imagine who would want to harm her." But as Brennan dug deeper into the dynamics at Oak Grove Elementary, a more complex picture emerged. Rumors of professional rivalry between Emily and Priya had been circulating for months, coming to a head with a recent heated argument over a coveted promotion to lead teacher. Sandra Martinez, the school's administrative assistant, recounted overhearing the argument to investigators. "Priya was furious," Sandra said. "She accused Emily of sabotaging her chances at the promotion, said she'd regret crossing her. It was ugly." Further investigation revealed that Priya had been passed over for promotions twice before, always coming in second to more experienced teachers. Colleagues described her as intensely driven, with some suggesting her ambitions sometimes crossed ethical lines. When confronted with this information, Priya's composed facade cracked slightly. "Of course I was disappointed about the promotion," she admitted, a flash of anger in her eyes. "I worked hard for it, but that doesn't mean I had anything to do with Emily's death." However, Brennan's team uncovered evidence that cast doubt on Priya's version of events. Security camera footage from a gas station near the Pisgah National Forest showed Priya's car in the area on the night of Emily's death, contradicting her claim that she had been home all evening. A search of Priya's apartment turned up a journal filled with increasingly angry entries about Emily. The final entry, dated the day before Emily's death, read, "I can't let her ruin everything I've worked for. There has to be a way to stop her." When presented with this evidence, Priya broke down. "Okay, I was there that night," she sobbed. "I followed Emily into the woods. I wanted to confront her, to make her understand how much that promotion meant to me. But I swear when I left, she was alive." Priya's admission placed her at the scene of Emily's death, providing both opportunity and a potential motive. But as Brennan would soon discover, the web of suspects in this case was far from simple. Daniel Cooper shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his calloused hands fidgeting with the brim of his worn baseball cap. At 42, Daniel had the weathered look of a man who had lived a hard life, his criminal record a testament to his troubled past. "Yeah, I did some work for the Walshes," Daniel admitted gruffly. "Nice lady, Mrs. Walsh. Always treated me with respect, unlike some folks around here." As Brennan delved into Daniel's background, she uncovered a history that raised red flags. He had served time for assault in his 20s and had a string of petty offenses on his record. More recently, he had been trying to turn his life around, building a reputation as a skilled handyman in the Asheville area. The investigation revealed that Daniel had done extensive renovations on the Walsh home in the months leading up to Emily's death. Several neighbors reported seeing his truck parked outside the house at odd hours, long after the work should have been completed. When questioned about these late-night visits, Daniel became evasive. "Sometimes I'd remember a job I forgot to finish," he said, not meeting Brennan's eyes. Mrs. Walsh was always real understanding about it. However, as Brennan dug deeper, she uncovered a more troubling connection. Financial records showed that Emily had been making regular cash withdrawals in the weeks before her death, always in amounts of $500 or $1,000. When confronted with this information, Daniel's demeanor changed dramatically. "Look, I didn't want to say anything before," he said, his voice low. "But Mrs. Walsh was helping me out. I got into some trouble with some old associates, owed them money. She found out somehow and offered to loan me the cash to pay them off." This revelation cast a new light on the case. Had Emily's generosity gotten her into trouble? Was Daniel involved in something more dangerous than he was letting on? A search of Daniel's workshop turned up a set of work boots caked with mud that matched soil samples from the crime scene. When presented with this evidence, Daniel's story changed again. "Okay, I was there that night," he admitted, his face pale. "Mrs. Walsh called me, said she needed to meet urgently. When I got there, she was upset, talking about how she'd made a terrible mistake, but I swear when I left her, she was alive." Daniel's admission placed him at the scene on the night of Emily's death, and his criminal history made him a compelling suspect. But as the investigation would soon reveal, the truth behind Emily Walsh's death was far more complex than anyone could have imagined. As weeks passed, the investigation into Emily Walsh's death seemed to stall. Each suspect, Michael, Priya, and Daniel, had potential motives and suspicious circumstances surrounding their actions on the night of Emily's death. Yet none of their stories fully explained all the evidence. The community of Asheville grew restless, demanding answers and justice for their beloved teacher. The pressure on Detective Brennan and her team mounted as they struggled to piece together the events of that fateful night. It was then that an unexpected breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Emily's phone, recovered from the scene, had been locked and seemingly devoid of useful information. However, a specialized forensic team managed to bypass the security and recover a cache of encrypted messages. As Brennan pored over the decrypted data, a shocking truth began to emerge. The messages revealed a secret that no one, not even those closest to Emily, could have suspected. For the past 6 months, Emily had been involved in a clandestine affair with Liam Parker, the 18-year-old son of her best friend, Hannah. The high school senior had become infatuated with Emily, his young emotions spiraling into an obsession that consumed them both. The messages painted a picture of a relationship that had begun innocently enough. Liam confiding in Emily about his struggles at school, Emily offering support and guidance. But over time, the boundaries blurred, and what started as a mentorship evolved into something far more inappropriate. Emily's messages showed a woman torn between guilt and desire, knowing what she was doing was wrong, but unable to extricate herself from the situation. Liam's messages, on the other hand, revealed a young man deeply in love, his emotions volatile and intense. As Brennan read through the exchanges, she could see the relationship deteriorating in the weeks leading up to Emily's death. Emily had been trying to end things, urging Liam to focus on his future and his impending graduation. Liam's responses grew increasingly desperate and angry. The final message sent on the night of Emily's death was from Liam. "We need to talk. Meet me at our spot in the woods. If you don't come, I'll tell everyone about us." This revelation turned the case on its head. Suddenly, all the inconsistencies that had puzzled Brennan began to make sense. The late-night absences, the secretive behavior, the emotional turmoil that friends and family had noticed in Emily, it all pointed to the hidden affair. With this new information, Brennan knew she had to move quickly. She ordered an immediate search for Liam Parker, but the young man was nowhere to be found. His parents reported that he had left for a camping trip with friends the day after Emily's body was discovered, and no one had heard from him since. As the search for Liam intensified, Brennan couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The woods that had once been a place of solace for Emily had become the keeper of a tragic secret, one that was about to shatter the lives of everyone involved. The search for Liam Parker ended 3 days later when he was found in a small cabin deep in the Pisgah National Forest. The cabin, owned by the Parker family, had been a favorite retreat for Liam since childhood. Now, it served as his hideout as he grappled with the consequences of his actions. When Detective Brennan arrived at the cabin, she found Liam sitting on the front porch, his young face haggard and tear-stained. He offered no resistance as he was taken into custody, his silence a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil evident in his eyes. At the Asheville Police Department, Liam finally broke his silence. In a voice barely above a whisper, he began to recount the events of that fateful night. "I loved her," Liam said, his words choked with emotion. "I know it was wrong, but I couldn't help how I felt. Emily, she understood me in a way no one else ever had." Liam described how the relationship had begun during his junior year, when he was struggling with depression and anxiety. Emily, a friend of his mother's and his former elementary school teacher, had offered support and guidance. Over time, their connection deepened, crossing lines that should never have been crossed. "At first it was amazing," Liam continued. "I felt like I was living in a dream. But then Emily started pulling away. She said we needed to end things, that she was going to tell her husband everything." On the night of Emily's death, Liam had asked her to meet him in the woods, a spot where they had often rendezvoused during their affair. His intention, he claimed, was to convince her to continue their relationship. "I thought if I could just talk to her, make her see how much we meant to each other, she'd change her mind," Liam said, his voice breaking. But when she arrived, she was different, cold. She said it was over, that she'd made a horrible mistake. As Liam recounted the argument that ensued, Detective Brennan could see the pain and regret etched on his young face. The confrontation had quickly escalated, with Liam pleading and Emily standing firm in her decision to end things. "I was so angry, so hurt," Liam sobbed. "I grabbed her arm trying to make her listen. She pulled away and I pushed her. I didn't mean to, it just happened so fast." Emily had stumbled backward, losing her footing on the uneven forest floor. She fell, striking her head on a large rock protruding from the ground. Liam described the sickening sound of the impact and the immediate stillness that followed. "There was so much blood," he whispered, his eyes distant. "I tried to help her, to stop the bleeding, but she wasn't moving. I panicked. I didn't know what to do." In a state of shock and fear, Liam had made the fateful decision to stage the scene as a suicide. He wrote a note, imitating Emily's handwriting as best he could, and placed it in her jacket pocket. Then he moved her body to a spot that looked like she could have fallen or jumped. "I convinced myself that it was better this way," Liam said, his voice hollow, "that people would remember Emily as she was, not as someone who had an affair with a student." As Liam's confession came to an end, the full weight of the tragedy settled over the room. What had begun as an inappropriate relationship born of loneliness and misguided affection had ended in a tragedy that would forever change the quiet town of Asheville. Detective Brennan sat in stunned silence as she absorbed Liam's confession. The case she had been tirelessly working to solve had just taken a turn she could never have anticipated. As a seasoned investigator, she had seen her share of tragic cases, but the layers of deception and the lives ruined in this one struck her deeply. "Liam," she finally said, her voice gentle but firm, "I need you to understand the gravity of what you've done. Not just Emily's death, but the cover-up afterward. You've implicated innocent people and caused immense pain to many." Liam nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know," he whispered. "I've thought about nothing else since that night. I wanted to come forward so many times, but I was scared. I didn't want to face what I'd done." The revelation of Liam's involvement and the circumstances surrounding Emily's death sent shockwaves through the community of Asheville. The tragedy had stemmed not from the obvious suspects, but from a tangled web of secrets and misplaced affections that no one could have foreseen. Liam Parker was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter and evidence tampering. Given his age and the circumstances of the crime, the prosecutor agreed to try him as an adult, but with consideration for his youth and lack of prior criminal record. The trial, held 6 months after Emily's death, captivated the town. The courthouse was packed each day, with spectators spilling out into the hallways, all eager to hear every detail of the scandalous affair and its tragic end. Liam's defense team argued for leniency, portraying him as a troubled young man who had been manipulated by a trusted authority figure. They presented evidence of Liam's struggles with mental health and painted Emily as the instigator of the inappropriate relationship. The prosecution, however, focused on Liam's actions after Emily's death. They argued that his decision to cover up the accident and allow others to fall under suspicion demonstrated a callousness that deserved severe punishment. In the end, the jury found Liam guilty on both counts. Judge Caroline Hartley, taking into account Liam's age and the unusual circumstances of the case, sentenced him to 8 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. The sentence also included mandatory counseling and community service upon release. As the gavel fell, sealing Liam's fate, a collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Hannah Parker, Liam's mother and Emily's former best friend, collapsed into sobs while Michael Walsh stared straight ahead, his face an unreadable mask. The aftermath of the trial left the town of Asheville reeling. The community that had once prided itself on its close-knit nature and family values was forced to confront the dark secrets that had festered beneath its pristine surface. Michael Walsh, cleared of any involvement in his wife's death, faced the dual betrayal of Emily's infidelity and the realization that he had been oblivious to her struggles. Unable to continue his life in Asheville, where every corner held memories of Emily and whispers of scandal, he resigned from his law firm and moved across the country to start anew. Priya Sharma, while exonerated of any wrongdoing in Emily's death, faced professional consequences for her aggressive ambition and the negative light cast on the school during the investigation. She left her teaching position at Oak Grove Elementary, moving to a different district where her past was unknown. Daniel Cooper, the handyman, found unexpected sympathy from the community. His willingness to help Emily, despite his own troubled past, was seen as a redeeming quality. With the cloud of suspicion lifted, he was able to rebuild his business, finding that many in Asheville were now more willing to give him a second chance. Hannah Parker, grappling with the loss of her best friend and the actions of her son, withdrew from public life. The betrayal she felt from Emily for engaging in a relationship with Liam, and from Liam for his actions, left her isolated and struggling to make sense of the tragedy. Oak Grove Elementary, once a source of pride for the community, found itself under intense scrutiny. Questions arose about how such an inappropriate relationship could have developed unnoticed. The school board implemented new policies and training programs aimed at preventing similar situations in the future. For Detective Sarah Brennan, the case marked a turning point in her career. Her thorough investigation and unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth, despite the shocking nature of the revelation, earned her commendations from her superiors. However, the case also left her with a deep-seated skepticism about the facades people present to the world. In the months and years that followed, the Asheville community struggled to heal. The case became a cautionary tale, told and retold, a stark reminder of the potential consequences of secrets and unchecked emotions. The Pisgah National Forest, once a place of solace and natural beauty for the residents of Asheville, took on a darker significance. The spot where Emily's body was found became an unofficial memorial, with flowers and mementos often left by those seeking to pay their respects or grapple with the tragedy that had unfolded there.